UFOs are real, burgeoning, not going away. I believe that this is the coming Great Deception. Our guest today, Tyler Gilreath, joins us. He's the author of a new book, The Liberty Code Act. He's been out for a while. We're going to talk about Age of Disclosure, that film, what's going on, what he thinks is about to happen, perhaps. And we'll get into that so much more. First, a word from our trusted sponsor. The rules of money are being rewritten right in front of our eyes. The institutions that control the financial system aren't waiting, warning, or wishing. They are acting. Buying gold and silver at an unprecedented pace. They're preparing for something. The question is, are you? For nearly a decade, Noble Gold Investments has helped thousands of people protect their wealth with physical gold and silver. As the world shifts to hard assets, the window to act is closing. Let Noble Gold show you how simple it is to protect yourself and your family. While everyone else is reacting to the news, Noble Gold clients are positioned. They understand that when the rules change, you need assets that don't depend on the system. Visit noblegoldinvestments.com, noblegoldinvestments.com, and download your free wealth protection kit. Once again, that's noblegoldinvestments.com, noblegoldinvestments.com. The rules are changing. Make sure you're ready. Folks, thanks for coming here. Really appreciate it. If you're not a member, consider becoming a member. We do one show a week that's members only, very exclusive. It's content that's never been seen before. So consider supporting what we do here. Thank you for subscribing. We're up over 266,000 subscribers, and thank you for coming here. A lot of you come here every day, and we're trying to do a new show. Well, we do a new show every single day, but we're bringing in more and more guests because we need to hear from people like Tyler. Tyler Gilreath is an investigative theologian, has been making waves with his groundbreaking work, The Liberty Code, which uncovers shocking connections between America's founding fathers, drumroll please, and alien life. His research suggests that the early presidents like George Washington and Thomas Jefferson knew more about UFOs and extraterrestrial intelligence than previously thought. Gilreath's latest findings tracing hidden thread connection, UFO encounters, government cover-ups, and biblical prophecy, even implicating President JFK's pursuit of UFO truth as a possible reason for his assassination. He believes modern UFO disclosures may pave the way for a global deception foretold in Scripture. Anyway, folks, we're going to get into this. Tyler, thanks so much for coming on the record. Appreciate it.
Yeah, LA, thank you for the invitation. It's always great to speak with like-minded people who take the Bible seriously and keep their finger on the pulse. You know, what is happening in the world as it relates to UAPs, UFOs. And so I'm looking forward to diving into all of this today with you and your audience.
Well, thank you again for coming on. You know, before we started rolling the cameras, and that's why I ended that conversation and wanted to get it here, we were talking about Age of Disclosure. And Age of Disclosure was the nexus which created our 10-speaker panel that we had 2 days, January 16th to 17th, deception2026.com, our virtual UFO conference. Over 2,500 people signed up for that. And if we do another one, I want to get you in on the lineup for sure. But what are your thoughts on Age of Disclosure, the film?
I think it's groundbreaking. Dan Farah, the director of the film, of course, you know, Lou Elizondo, who has held some pretty high clearances in government roles and investigating UFOs, came out with a groundbreaking doc that is, I believe, the #1 bestseller on Prime.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
for documentaries, and there's a reason why. LA people for a long time have been looking for something like this, where only government officials that hold clearances and are in the know could come on camera arm in arm, as Dan Farah so often says, and come out together that this is a real phenomenon. The U.S. government for decades has been investigating reverse engineering, non-human technology, and they believe that this is the most important revelation and technology to ever be on planet Earth. I mean, if we can crack the code on this, if China or Russia can successfully reverse engineer and instantaneously deliver a nuclear weapon across the globe, it's game over. And so I believe this is a soft rollout in a sequential planned disclosure that will change reality as we know it.
And it will change reality. I mean, if, and I want to get your thoughts on this, if our president Donald J. Trump stands up on a Friday afternoon with the Joint Chiefs of Staff behind him, his cabinet's there, it's a whole deal, and it's not in the Oval Office, it's where he comes down the hallway, that type of thing. So it's really a grand entrance, as it were. And he looks right at the camera and he goes, "We have an announcement to make. We've known about this for years. We're not alone." What do you think happens then?
Yeah, I think after Trump, would make a statement like that as the disclosure president, which many are at this time actively trying to get Trump to see that if you want a great legacy,
There you go.
first to come out with disclosure. And so you'd have people that flank him often, such as Marco Rubio, who is well versed in this topic. He was a member of the Gang of Eight, and now National Security Advisor. Just so much. You would have others that would testify and probably echo what the president has said, which would bring a lot of clarity to it, and I think would probably reassure people. He's an unpredictable character. Very much so. People don't take him seriously in what he says. But if you have the cabinet as a whole and J.D. Vance, who is very much interested in UFOs, if they're all read in and they're all on the know and they're all very articulate in what they say, then it would be convincing. There would be an aftermath, the likes of which the world has never seen.
Yeah.
On many levels, you have, and they know about this, and they've war gamed this back in the Bush era, trying to decide, is it worth it to disclose? But you would have a financial fallout with the Bank of England came out, as you know, recently.
Yeah.
Said, brace yourself, for disclosure, because this will affect the markets. Because you're talking about energy, and energy is what makes the world turn. And that's why we fight over land and try to take over because of what's under the ground, the oil. And now suddenly that is obsolete. You have a new energy source, and you have weaponization, you have espionage, which would increase undoubtedly. You would have theological bombshells going off in churches around the world, preachers, pastors being questioned, leadership being called on the carpet, demanding biblical answers, many of which are not equipped to give because they don't have a supernatural worldview.
Right.
You would have a new generation of people, young people, looking to the stars for answers, seeking out mysticism. So much could be said and will be said, I believe, when disclosure happens, but that's just the hem of the garment, so much.
And you and I are up, I've never spoken to you before, but we're like simpatico. We're on the same page. You mentioned the church and the repercussions that would it'd be shockwave, in my opinion. So how do we warn a sleeping church? How do we try to wake up a sleeping church that is oblivious? I'll just give you an example before I let you answer the question. I'm headed to parts unknown. I'm not telling you where or when, for that matter. I'm being deliberately, because I don't want to get anybody in trouble. But I'm headed to some place, and it's not listed. And I'll be speaking at a church, and we're going to be showing the Shroud of Turin film. And the reason for that is it's safe. But this particular pastor doesn't want to venture into the UFO phenomena. And this is what drives me kind of batty, because our media is talking about it. Our Congress is talking about it. It's everywhere. Age of Disclosure, the number one movie on Prime right now, right? It's everywhere. And yet the church is still afraid to talk about it. Your thoughts?
Yeah, and they're afraid to talk about angels and demons. So that's the ultimate, and giants for that matter. And that's the only. So that is the ultimate problem. Unfortunately, the modern church listens to Fox News or CNN more than the Bible on these issues. So it may tape a secular announcement before they'll look in our Bibles and be honest about what's actually in there. But one thing that I think is important in this whole discussion, especially as we think about America, and I talk about this in my book, The Liberty Code, what is happening now, LA? We have Congress, the Senate, the House of Representatives. You have open hearings,
Right.
whistleblower, all this conversation in Washington, where we come full circle. Just to give you a little flavor of how long this conversation has been going on, going back to really 1796, you had a man by the name of David Rittenhouse, who was the first director of the U.S. Mint, passed away, and 6 months later there was a eulogy. He was president of the American Philosophical Society, and this was a prestigious institution. It was the think tank of the day. Long story short, at his eulogium, invitations go out all across the United States. George Washington is invited. Of course, John Adams. You had individuals such as Andrew Jackson, James Madison, Aaron Burr.
Wow.
Some of these were presidents of the United States. So you have 4 or 5 presidents present together at this eulogium. And Dr. Benjamin Rush, he was tapped with being the MC of the event. And he was a signer of the Declaration of Independence. And so all these presidents, future presidents are gathered, Senate, House, foreign dignitaries, and Dr. Benjamin Rush reads some of the musings and writings of Rittenhouse, which was an astronomer, just a brilliant man, tracked for the transit of Venus, I believe, in 1769. And he talked about how Rittenhouse speculated about extraterrestrial life. And I talk about in my book, it's just unbelievable the fact that they're having conversation or listening to writings in a church building, LA,
Right.
the First Presbyterian on High Street at noon in Philadelphia. And they're listening together collectively as a body, thinking about wrestling with the potentiality of a non-human intelligence. That is what is happening now. We've come full circle. And I believe that the powers of darkness have been vying for the microphone of America. And that's where we are now.
I like that. Vying for the microphone of America. Very true. Very true. I have not read the book yet. I want to get it. I want to sit down and read it because we're sort of cross-pollinating here. I'm in your wheelhouse, you're in my wheelhouse, and that's really cool. I know that my research talked about the early church, our government, like people like Washington, Jefferson, and UFO encounters and what they may or may not have seen. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, Thomas Jefferson received 2 UFO reports that came across his desk. This is public information. There is the letter. One of the letters is hanging on the Monticello Museum, which was Jefferson's residence. And there was another letter written that basically described a large 70 to 80 foot object the size of the house flying over and crashing. And there was a search team trying to determine what exactly was going on. There was actually a drawing as well that was attached to this document. Jefferson read the document when he became president of the American Philosophical Society, following individuals such as Rittenhouse. He read it to his esteemed colleagues. And so in the historical archive, there are things that I wish was making the news. I wish the Congress and Senate would know about these historical documents that are I tried to unearth in my research and bring to the public conversation, because we need to know, and I think our government needs to know, that the third president of the United States received several UFO reports and actually communicated at least one of those to important people.
Let me ask you something. So Israel becomes a nation May 14th, 1948. And in my opinion, the entire UFO phenomena as we know it. Now, this is a little bit outside your book, but I know you've studied, I know you've been into this whole field for a while. So 1948, the whole UFO phenomena, the modern UFO phenomena as we know it, you get Betty and Barney Hill, the first abductees. Of crops start popping up all over the place. Sightings over Washington D.C. for crying out loud. And this whole thing just takes off. And here we are, 2026, and Congress isn't letting go of this thing. UFOs are real, burgeoning, not going away. You've got whistleblowers coming. We've got non-human biologics. David Grush stands up in the halls of Congress and saying this. Said, what are your thoughts? I mean, are we getting close to disclosure, in your opinion?
We definitely are. There's no doubt about it. Some would argue we're already there. Some would argue we're not getting an announcement from the president. And that's one thing I've done. I'm glad you brought up the historicity of this because it's so important. I mean, this goes back, as I mentioned, to Washington, Jefferson, John Adams. John Adams wrote, he had an extraterrestrial diary where he essentially speculated as well about life on other planets. In fact, the assumption was in the early Americas that there was life on other planets. And so I believe this curiosity was noted by angels and demons and the watchers, whomever, and they played on this curiosity and planted these UFO sightings across the world. As you said, it goes back to the modern era. You have FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. He dealt with the Battle of Los Angeles, February 25th, 1942.
Right.
Just a few days later, there was several letters written between FDR and General George C. Marshall that were containing celestial devices and non-earthly airplanes. You have a memo written to Dr. Vandervoort Bush,
Bush, right,
and Albert Einstein, that talked about this special committee on non-terrestrial science and technology. So from that point, we see an acceleration of this topic, and it goes to Truman. Truman had the White House flyover, as you alluded to, on two consecutive weekends, July 19th and July 26th, 1952. Then you had Roswell, right? Or is July 1947. And from there, it just explodes. The sightings go way off the charts. The abductions begin happening.
Yep.
Many people think that following Truman, you had
Eisenhower
that made, these treaties with aliens, if you will.
I agree.
Yeah. And, my research I uncovered, and we can get in this later in more depth, but you had John F. Kennedy, who wrote several letters to then CIA director. One was John McCone, demanding answers on UFO transparency. There's evidence that he was killed for this very reason. I'll talk about that in my book as well. So, what we see is a pattern, LA, of the presidents being at the center of this ship, which is sinking as far as keeping truth in the dark. It is coming out. Disclosure is happening on a scale we've never seen before. And everything I'm hearing, and I'm sure you're hearing the same thing, Trump and his team are trying to determine how to deal with it.
Yeah.
Maybe when they want to deal with it and how they can leverage, quite frankly, the topic of UFO disclosure. So it is a matter of time. I'm a firm believer in that. Now, they may not give us the GPS locations to the hangars and the bodies, but that is not really that important. What's important is that they level with the American people on what is happening. And that is where you and I come in, because we can bring some biblical context to this, which is most important.
And I concur. I've often stated that I believe that they've got full color footage of the Roswell 1937. I mean, they've got, because we actually show in our Roswell film, and my business partner, Gil Zimmerman, and we watched this little clip over and over and over again. And then we said, we both agreed it doesn't look like a hoax. It looks like somebody leaked it. And it's black and white, and it shows the body being brought in. And there's all these people just running around. It's complete. So, to film something like that as a filmmaker, you got to get all the uniforms. You got to get all the stuff, the setting, the set. I mean, you're talking, and then for what reason? To create a hoax? Well, are you making any money off of this? You're not. So we both believed it was real, and you can see the body being brought in on a stretcher. So I've often said, go ahead.
Yeah, and then you have the famous alien interview, which I was not sure you're familiar with,
J-Rod?
but it's
The J-Rod boy? Yeah, sure.
yeah, it's pretty interesting, and
I think it's a puppet.
yeah, okay, but there's videos like that out there,
Right. Skinny Rob's another one.
Yeah, that need speculation and need analysis. So, any videos like the forthcoming James Fox video of the alien in Virginia,
Right.
which he says there is a video. So, videos like that, like the ones you've seen, are going to be pretty important. I think moving forward, especially the older videos.
Roswell, UH7.
Exact.
Show us the crash site, baby.
Yeah, because a lot of the newer stuff, can be faked.
Yes.
So we want to see some old stuff. I want to see some old stuff.
I think if they want to be honest with the American people, they need to go back to 47 and Roswell. That's where the cover up started, because they came out on July 8th, I believe, saying, RAAF captures flying saucer, flying disc. And then on the 9th, it's a weather balloon. And then from there, that is the paradigm that everybody embraces. You're a tinfoil hat wearing guy if you believe in UFOs. But now it's being talked about in Congress. So let me ask you something. Where does Bible prophecy address this at all, in your opinion?
It does, especially in the book of Revelation, when you begin to connect and conflate fallen angels and aliens. That is the key.
That's the key.
That's the key. You got to understand that connection. If you don't, you think this is all craziness. But and it's hard to make that connection if you don't understand the criminality of the past. If you don't understand Genesis 6, Deuteronomy 32, you have no worldview,
right,
and see the guilt and how deep the guilt goes. Before you'll get on board with this future prophecy or what is present, what is happening now. So yeah, it's totally in there. At the very least, people, while they may be confused by Revelation, they should have in their minds there is an intensification of demonic activity in the last days.
Very much so.
If they can wrap their heads around that simple piece, they can see what's happening.
Wow. Really good stuff. I don't want to give away the farm here, but, we are in this window of time, which is just, it's unprecedented. Absolutely. And, the thing is, going back to Trump, because everything is linked together and news travels at the speed of light, literally. And we're all linked up with satellites and the internet and and now AI. If Trump makes that announcement, that's a game changer, a global game changer. What do you think the result of that would be on a global level?
I think obviously the legacy media will finally cover it seriously. Right now you have News Nation. That's it. Just News Nation doing all the. And Brett Baer occasionally will talk. Brett Baer for Alex News.
Exactly.
But you need a across the board. This is a serious topic. This is real. This is happening. But there will be those who lose their faith, unfortunately.
Well, that goes into the where is it? Oh, doggone it! It's 1 Timothy chapter 4. The Spirit expressly states that in the latter days some will depart from the faith, giving heed to the doctrines of demons and seducing spirits. I mean, it's right there. It's right there. So I think that's where we are about to cross that threshold.
And at LA, I've lately been thinking even beyond that. Could it be that is the end game of the demonic activity, the spirits, the aliens? Or could it be there's actually more involved? I mean, I know this gets into some woo stuff, but we live in the woo. There's talk now of these craft having gravitational, like bubbles that like a time-space side bubble around them. That's why it's hard to feel them.
Yeah, that's why they're always fuzzy.
Yeah, I mean, let's just kind of explore this just for a minute. What would be the number one goal of the Pirates of Darkness if they could do anything? LA, what do you think their number one agenda?
Capture every soul on the planet.
Capture every soul on the planet. How would they do that?
Very simple. Yeah, we know. Well, fear is always the calling card. And that's why if a nuke goes off, I wrote about this and it's in the films, a nuke goes off anywhere, that creates the greatest climate of fear. That's when they show up. That's why we're so interested in all the nuke sites. That's why, because they know that that's their calling card. In other words, they just can't manifest. They have to be allowed to manifest. So you get a nuke going off, that creates the greatest amount of fear. The space brothers show up. We created all life on this planet. We genetically manipulated early man, started the world's religions, the whole deal. We're back at this critical juncture, and you can become a space brother too.
That's right, and that's perhaps the most obvious. They're trying to sow doubt. The ontology of man, they in their minds did not come from God. We are seated. The earth is
we're seated by them.
But that I wonder what if there is, and again, the technology. What if there is a time travel component to it? Space-time, manipulating space-time. We know the Secretary of Technology came out recently and said, our technology allows us to obliterate space and time.
I know, I read this. It's just, what does that mean? And what implications does it have for the man on the street? And for, Joe and Mary in the pew? I mean, how does it trickle down? This is why, in my opinion, he's got to come and get us out of here at some point. Because you can't, we can't deal with this. We're not equipped to really deal with the angelic realm. In a glorified body we are, but we're not in glorified bodies. So we're not equipped to deal, even though he's, given us all authority, trample over snakes and scorpions, all power they me. I get that. But this is a whole different deal. This is like, the dark side fully manifesting on the planet.
Yeah, let me tell you this, LA. So I never encountered a UFO. I'm 37 years old. Okay, catch this. Ever in my life. I'm a licensed drone pilot. I'm constantly looking up flying drones. I announce on Facebook, I am releasing a book on UFOs. I'm driving down the Interstate 75, me, my wife, my two kids, driving north on the Georgia-Tennessee line. And within 60 minutes of announcing I'm releasing a book on UFOs, straight above the interstate, stationary, is a tic-tac metallic object hovering like this. Okay?
Wow.
It's about the size of a large car. It looked like a true propane tank in the air, just spinning on its axis. I see it. My wife sees it. My wife saw it before I saw it. And then my kids see it. We watch it for a while as we drive, then we drive under it, and then I lose it in my mirror. So what's the probability that I go 37 years without seeing a UFO, and within 60 minutes of announcing I wrote a book on UFOs, I see one at 2 o'clock, blue skies, broad daylight?
Yeah, that's pretty
incredible.
Yeah, it is incredible.
So they're watching.
They are.
They're watching. They know. But let me go back to something here, because I'm chasing a rabbit, and I'm just curious what your thoughts are, LA. The aliens, the demons, the fallen angels, they are in desperation mode. Okay? Total desperation mode. They've lost the war.
At the cross.
At the cross. What if they're trying to find a way for man to change time, undo the cross? Just saying. Now, I don't think that actually could ever happen. I think the Lord would intervene. But that would be, in my mind, something that they would desperately want to change.
I have heard, and I can't prove this. I wrote about this actually in the very first novel published in 1998, 99. And in that, one of the characters is in an underground base, and he's being shown what's like video, but it's holographic in front of him. And they show they're back in time. It's Golgotha. The crucifixion is there. And above the cross are UFOs. And they're all, this whole thing including the resurrection, is a UFO event. And the guy watching all this sees that, oh, Jesus rose from the dead because of them. So they've already kind of manipulated it that way. Anything to usurp the work of the cross, anything to usurp Jesus's deity. And this is why it's the days of Noah. This is why even the elect would be deceived if that were possible. This is why men think from fear from what's coming upon the earth. So, we're in a window of time that is absolutely unprecedented in every way.
Yeah, I would have to think that they don't have the ability to change time.
No, I don't either. They can.
I don't think they have the ability.
Yeah, they can maybe move through it.
Yeah,
on some level.
I just wonder if that technology that they are presenting, can they give it to us? Would we have that ability to tamper with time, even on a small scale? Maybe not at 2,000 year scale, but I'm just wondering, like, what all could be on their agenda. It may not just be the obvious. Perhaps it's more sinister than we could possibly imagine.
Well, I mean, I think what they want is your soul. They want my soul, your soul, everybody's soul, and that's what's going to happen at some point. You take the mark, you wind up in the lake of fire. That's the end of your soul, and you've sided with them. So I just think I think he's got to come back soon because you can't fix this anymore. I keep saying that, and I think that this is the revealing of the so-called extraterrestrial presence will lead to the Great Deception. So, Tyler, I'm going to give you a last word. Tell folks how to get the book. I really want to get my copy and bone up on it too. But thanks for your bravery and thanks for coming on the show. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely, I appreciate enjoyed the conversation. It's on Amazon. It's an obvious place to grab it. You can just type in my name, Tyler Gilreath, on Amazon. I have 3 books on there. Gate of the Gods, Gospel Over Gods, and the Liberty Code. Check them out. Give them a read. Just to put flyover, the first one's Gospel Over Gods, my first book. It's a chronological study of God versus the fallen angels.
Wow.
Through the Bible. And then Gate of the Gods is a deep dive into the book of Revelation, the supernatural war in John's Apocalypse. And then, as we discussed here today, the Liberty Code, which is a historical investigation into the UFO phenomenon.
Well, good research. I wish you all the best. Going to have you back on maybe once a month or something just to touch base and, kind of hug shop to our audience. Thank you, Tyler. Really appreciate it, folks. Go to Amazon, Tyler Gilreath, and check it out for yourselves. I'm definitely going to order the book, and I thank you for coming on the show. Folks, UFOs are real. Versioning not going away. This is the coming Great Deception. So buckle up. Our 10 DVD box set. Don't forget deception2026.com. It'll take you right to our website. You can watch all 10 speakers. And if we do another one, you're one of the speakers for sure. Absolutely. I'm back, folks. Thank you so much. Consider becoming a member. We do one members show a week just for members. That's it. And it's always, I've got like 120 SD cards with all sorts of scenes that we've never used. So, and commentary. So check it out. Become a member. I thank you ahead of time. So I'm here with B and J. That's what we're going to call them, B and J. And we'll start off with Mr. B. He's going to remain anonymous in the sense there's no camera here, and we'll just call him Mr. B. And then Mrs. J. And that's how we're going to couch this. So Mr. B, thanks so much for coming on the record. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
So I want to start with the Squatch. So years ago, you had a sighting. And tell us about the sighting, please.
Well, one morning I was going out to check on my horses, and I had a large German Shepherd that was always by my side. And we went out to the barn and started around to the back of the barn, and he let a couple barks out and then started growling and sat right beside me and pushed up against my leg as I was trying to figure out what he was barking at. And I looked over, it would have been toward the southeast part of our farm. And I noticed something behind what we call here Russian olive bushes. And it was very dark, very large, but I could just see, this dark thing. And then it moved. And when it moved, it kind of scared the heck out of me, and I just kind of froze and watched. But it just was like, I felt like it was staring at my dog and I. And then finally it came out from the back of this bush, and it was trying to grab something like a rabbit or something. It was out in this old grass hayfield. And then it stood up, and I was, absolutely terrified at that point. It just scared the heck out of me. And it went around and back to the bush again. And it's kind of looked back at us. And then it turned and it headed toward the woods on a diagonal from where we were back in the barn. And I can't say how far it was from that bush to the woods, but it was quite a ways, and it literally was just a blur. But I am guessing from where I was standing to where I saw this Sasquatch, around 250 feet or so. And it took me about 2 or 3 days to get courage enough to go out there. But that bush was over 6 foot because I'm over 6 foot tall. And it stood above the bush, like I could see all its shoulders and its head. And it was dark. It was huge. I'm guessing probably 8 foot tall or around there. And it moved so quickly that when it headed toward the woods, it was just a blur. And it was very dark haired.
Did it make any sound, Mr. B? Did it make any sound?
No, I couldn't hear any sound.
Okay.
And it was quite strange because my German Shepherd was trained, and he got very quiet. I literally could not move. I couldn't say anything, couldn't make a noise. And I would say normally he would have went absolutely crazy, and he just sat there beside me, pushed up against my leg, but like he was scared too.
Yeah. So let me ask you something. When you say that you couldn't move,
Yes.
were you like frozen?
Yeah, it's like I couldn't move. I couldn't move my feet. I couldn't move my body. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't holler. I couldn't scream. But I don't know. I never felt like this before.
So when did that feeling, when did you return to normal after that?
I would say, I'm going to guess at this, probably a minute or so after you disappeared into the woods. I still think about it, is that it was so fast for such a large, or what you would call it, beast.
Sure.
It was literally, it wasn't like I seeing a person running or anything like that. It was literally a blur on how fast it moved.
And then it went into the woods. And then tell me how you came back into control of your senses, your faculties. How did that work?
Well, it took a minute or so, and I just, I kind of just turned around and headed back toward the house, the dog and I, but it probably took a few minutes for me to collect myself. And then I went in and I talked to my late wife and told her what the experience was. And I was kind of afraid to say anything to people.
Sure.
I know that I had a neighbor that he leased a lot of property in the area, and he used to work odd my farm too, doing hay and that for me. And I asked him if he had ever saw anything odd. And he said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, have you ever seen anything big and dark? And he got very quiet and literally never mentioned a word for a couple minutes. And then he finally looked up at me and said, nope, never seen anything. Wow. That was the end of the conversation. So that kind of made me feel that, yeah, I think you probably have seen something and you just don't want to say anything.
Right. So I'm really intrigued by the fact that you were shut down. I find that really, I've heard similar things like this from other people with encounters of Squatches where they're just shut down. They can't move, or it's like moving through molasses. One guy described it as moving through molasses, whatever, molasses, something thick like a fog. Basically, he couldn't move. But in your case, so so you're walking in the field with your dog, and then you stop. Now you're in the open field. You're not behind anything, correct?
Correct. I was like in the barnyard, it was all open field.
Okay.
It was open other than that darn bush. I could see for a long ways, half mile or so.
How close were you to the bush?
I'm guessing around 250 feet.
Okay, so you're not like really close, but you're close.
Not super close.
Okay, so you're in the barnyard, you stare at the bush. When do you realize that you can't move?
When this thing walked out in back of the bush. As soon as I'm seeing it, it was like, oh my gosh, is this for real? And that's when it's like I froze in time.
Okay, well, now wait a second. When you say you froze, was that something that you did, or did you feel like something had control over you?
I don't know that I have an answer for that. All I know is that I've always been very strong, very active, and I literally could not take the step or move anything. I couldn't say anything or make any sound.
Like I said, I've heard stories like this before. They have the ability to shut you down, and that's what happened to you, in my opinion. So moving forward, you had another encounter. You're with the military, and you're outside Washington, D.C. Tell us roughly how old you are, what year this is, and what happened.
I was 18 or 19, and it was in 1967. And I was stationed for a short time at a military base just outside of Washington, D.C. And one night, we were all put on alert. And we were all issued rifles, our full packs, ammo, the whole 9 yards. And we waited and waited and waited, and we were all wondering. And finally, a sergeant came in and explained to us that we were on alert and that we were on standby because UFOs had been sighted over the White House. And so, long story short, we stayed there for a very long time, pretty much most of the night. We never were called in or loaded up to go into Washington, D.C.
Did anyone ever follow up on that and say false alarm or okay, the threat is over? How did it sort of dissipate?
Well, they came back and said, okay, you guys turn in your gear. And so that's what we started doing. We, took our weapons and turned them back in. And there was really nothing else said about it. And later on, after we went to the mess hall and had breakfast, we all went to our normal jobs.
Okay. Wow. Very, very interesting. Very interesting. Let me ask you something. Do you think it could have been like a drill or I mean, like when the guy that comes in and says there's UFOs over the White House, what was his expression like? What was his demeanor like?
Well, he was very serious.
Was he afraid?
No, he was uh, uh, a man who had been in the military for quite a while and had seen a lot. So he didn't seem like he was afraid of anything, but he just had us all, standing by. And when I say all, there was quite a few of us. I'd say probably at least 100 men.
Wow. Was there any scuttlebutt after they called the thing off? Did you talk about it with this guy or other members or other personnel? Was there any discussion about it, or did it just sort of dissipate?
It just kind of dissipated. I mean, there was, some people wondering, was this real? And other people were laughing about it. And I none of us really know. But, we had heard reports that this wasn't the first time that sightings like this had taken place. But, I guess the thing is that we were issued live ammo. So
Yeah,
that happens. To me, that's pretty serious.
yeah, because you're about to be deployed someplace. Mr. B, those are two really great stories, and I just thank you for coming on the record and being bold enough. Now, let's turn to Mrs. J. So, Mrs. J, thank you for joining us. You had an encounter. Tell us about it, please.
Yes. I was, can I say the state I was in? I won't say,
Well, that's fine. That's fine.
I was born and raised in New Hampshire. I was 17 and 18. So I was working and living on a horse farm. It was a breeding farm, and they had about 25 head of horses, stallions, mares, and foals. And I sort of became like a daughter to the couple that owned it. And so, the date was, I can tell you, October 7. It was either 78 or 79. And actually his wife was it was a small New England town, and it was hilly country, and the farm was up on a hill. And at the bottom of the hill was a church where the lady was a choir director. So she was going to choir. I was in the choir. Their son and daughter-in-law were in the choir. Our friends were in the choir. There's a lot of people. So she had gone down the hill to choir practice, and the owner of the property, Mr. and I had to take out the last 4 horses because they had some horses that went out at nighttime. So we each led 2 horses out. We wanted to get them out so I could get down the hill to choir. So we took them out behind the barn. It's a good walk to the pasture where they were going to be in. And so it was around 7:10-ish. We put the horses in the pasture, shut the gate, and started to walk back toward the barn and house. And where this was, there was a tree line that divided 2 pastures we just put the horses into. There was a tree line that went down the middle. And as we started to walk away, we heard this really deep, deep rumbling noise. It's almost like you could feel this rumbling noise in body. It was so deep. And we're looking up, what the heck? And over this line of trees, we see 2 V's. They are on their edge. They are, obviously the wider opening part are facing each other, but they're very far apart.
Is it kind of like this?
Exactly.
Okay.
And the lights were only in the V's. They were white or yellowish to the navy a little bit. I can't quite remember exactly, and I'd say I didn't count them, but I could if I'd wanted to. But they were, I'd say, at least 7 to 9 lights in each V, probably. And there was absolutely no blinking lights, with absolutely no red or green. There was absolutely nothing else except for those 2 V's. And they were very much obviously going exactly together. Moving, yes, very slowly. While they were coming, we were sort of, say, facing south. They would be coming from our right, say, from the west.
Okay.
And going, it didn't go directly over our heads. It was a little bit south of us, but it was so low. I just feel like if I had a really strong, some kind of light, I might have seen what was in the middle. It was not that high up. And it was so slow, LA, like it should have fallen out of the sky.
Right.
So it went very slowly over this horse pasture. We would just put the horses in, and of course it was dark. The horses, I don't know what they were doing. They were probably weighed down because it was a long pasture. But anyway, but slowly passed us overhead, and I'm like 17, 18 years old. I'm like jumping up and down. It's a UFO. It's a UFO. So anyway, it continued on, and as it went past us a little ways, it sort of started turning left, and you could see exactly that it was turning as one unit, turning, and the rumbling noise continued. But then it sort of kind of went into some clouds or something. I don't know. It just, the lights went away and the noise went away. It just was gone. And I'm telling you, it was not that far up, and it was not that far away. Later, the mister described it as a flying football field over our heads. And he had been in the military, been overseas. He'd seen a lot of stuff. So I left that up to him to gauge the size of it. Anyway, so I went running, back to the house, had to get down the hill to fire. I told everybody there. And it found out later that the lead soprano was a good friend of theirs, and she lived 2, maybe 3 miles away, more westerly, maybe a little bit north, I'm not sure, but from their property. And she later shared that she had been late too. She whistled to the dog around 7 o'clock, get the dog in so she could get to choir practice. She said she noticed something large, but she just was in such a rush, she didn't take time to focus on it or look at it really good. But it went over her house about 10 minutes before it got to where we were. So 10 minutes and 2 or 3 miles, 10 minutes for 2 or 3 miles. So, yeah, I don't know how somebody could stay in the air like that.
It's obviously not a plane. It's not a helicopter.
It's not, obviously not.
Look at
It's so flying in the dark in the hills in New Hampshire,
Right.
like that low, and no blinking lights. So I decided, I thought, I want to know if other people saw this or, reported anything. So, within a few days, I called to the little police station of the town. I described it. So the only response I got from him that answered the phone, the officer or whatever, he said, well, what did it do wrong? I mean, I didn't know what to say.
Right.
What was I supposed to say? It invaded our airspace, so, go arrest it, please. I didn't know what to say, so that was the end of that conversation. So then I called the local airport, maybe a half hour away. They had nothing. It was too little for something like that to land anyway, the local airport. And then I got somehow the name and number of somebody, I think in Massachusetts, who was a UFO person researching or whatever, a gentleman. I called him, and I think he got back to me after looking into it a little bit. The only thing he had to say was there were refueling airplanes in the area, and we saw those multiple.
That's not a refueling airplane.
Way, way, way up there. You could tell the airplane, blinking lights. Yes, no way. Had nothing to do with that. And so then I did, actually, it's been so long, I don't remember how I got these numbers. Maybe he gave me the number of Betty Hill, the Betty and Barney Hill.
William Barney Hill, sure.
They were abducted in northern New Hampshire. So he was passed away by then, but I spoke with her briefly, and I explained what I'd seen and all that, and she agreed it was likely a UFO. And she said that they can also camouflage themselves as anything they want.
So you actually got to talk to Betty Hill?
Yes, sir.
That's
yeah.
Did you any more of that conversation that you can share that you remember?
That's the only 2 things I really remember. She went, she was older by then.
Yeah.
And
because her encounter happened in the 50s.
Yeah. Anyway, somewhere back there. Yeah.
Let me ask you something. I want to go back into the sound. Just describe the sound. What did it sound like? How deep was it?
I don't think I've ever heard anything that deep again, really, compared to anything. It was like rumbling inside of you. It was so deep rumbling.
Oh, okay.
It was like you'd feel it as much as you could hear it. It was like just reverberating throughout your body. And that's the way I feel. And it's just like, it was unbelievable. It was going so slow.
Right.
It was slow.
Right.
I don't know how it even didn't fall out of the sky.
Yeah. How did the horses react to the sound?
I wish I could say something about that, but it was dark and they were, obviously they left and went down. It was a very long pasture. They might have ran down there. I have no idea.
Okay.
That noise, I wouldn't have been able to hear even if they were running.
How loud was it? It like, for instance, when you're at an airport and a jet takes off, that's all you're going to hear is the jet taking off, or a helicopter coming close. How
Yeah.
how intense was the sound?
I mean, I'd have jumping up and down screaming, it's a UFO, but yeah, it was very loud rumbling, and I'm sure we wouldn't have been able to hear anything else.
Mrs. J, were you afraid?
I wish I could say, I wish I could say, but I just wasn't. I just was so excited that maybe I was seeing a real UFO. Being 17, 18, I thought that was a great thing.
I get it. I totally get it.
But yeah, I just, at the time it wasn't. I guess I look back, I thought, boy, maybe I should be careful. Maybe I would have gotten scooped up or something.
When it went into the clouds,
Yes.
did it just kind of go into the clouds and then just sort of
Yeah.
disappear?
Yeah, the light just disappeared. It disappeared. Yep.
And
It's very strange because it was like making a U-turn. It was basically not a U-turn, but it was curving to the left. And it might have come a little bit from the northwest, so it almost was making a bit of a U-turn.
when it went into the clouds, what happened to the sound? Did the sound stop as it was? So let's say here's the cloud.
Right.
Here's the V. So the V comes in. When does the sound stop? Do you remember?
No, I can't say exactly if it stopped at that moment or whether it was just a little bit afterwards, but it was pretty, I'd say at the same time, within a minute or two at the most. Because I had to get back to, like I said, I had to go back and I had to get down to Flyer. So once it was gone, I just hustled back to the house.
Any last thoughts? And thank you both for coming on the record. Appreciate it.
Yeah, my husband had his UFO as a teen. The experience as a teen that he possibly would share as well. Like he was 17, and he might have been abducted to some degree. We don't know.
Yeah, if you want to hear about it.
Sure, please.
Yeah, one night I was, we were all in bed. I lived with an aunt and uncle on a farm. And the dogs started barking outside and our horses started raising Cain. And I got out of bed and looked out and I was looking to the east. This is a big old farmhouse. And I saw this really bright light and I just couldn't quite figure out what that was. And I watched it for a minute and then all of a sudden it was like this bright light hit me in the face.
Oh.
And the next thing I knew, I was outside and my uncle was asking me if I was all right. And I would have had to go down this long hallway past my aunt and uncle's bedroom and my cousins downstairs and all the way through the house to get outside. I have no idea how I got there. And that was kind of it, it's like this bright light hit me in the face and I don't remember anything.
That's it. You're shut off completely.
Yes.
Is there any chance of missing time? In other words, you're at the window, you see the light, and then later on you kind of come to outside the house. So when you're coming to, is your uncle, are you okay? Explain that. Try to remember back.
I have no idea how long all of this, what kind of time frame there was in between when I saw the light and the flash hit me in the face, and by the time my uncle found me outside. I don't know how he even found me outside.
Okay.
He did. Maybe he heard the horses and the dog raise their cane too.
Were you wearing the same clothes at the window and then later on outside?
Yes, I was. I was in a t-shirt and my underwear.
Okay, so you had the same clothes on, nothing like that. Do you remember?
Barefoot.
Okay, do you remember?
Remember that.
What about nosebleeds like 24, 48 hours afterwards?
I don't know. As a young man, I guess I used to get quite a few nosebleeds. but I guess I never paid any attention to why or anything.
Right. Why would your uncle to ask if you were okay, do you think?
I don't know. He was ex-military, and I know he just asked me if I was okay, and I don't remember even going from the driveway back to my bedroom.
Wow.
But the next morning, got up to have breakfast and that, and the only thing that was ever said was, he asked me when I came down, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Yes, sir." And nothing else was ever mentioned about it.
Interesting. To me, it sounds you have all the hallmarks of being abducted, of being taken. And that's the only time it ever happened. After that, there's no other encounter. Is that a safe statement to make?
That's correct.
It sounds like you were taken. This is conjecture on my part because your uncle was ex-military. There may have been some sort of connection there, but you just don't know. Just don't know. Very interesting. But I thank you both for coming on the record. Very interesting stories. Thank you for being bold and courageous enough to share your story. Folks, if you have a story and you want to come on the record, la@lamarzulli.net. la@lamarzulli.net. We can keep you anonymous just like this, and you can share your testimony with those that need to hear it. Because you know what? Congress is talking about it. If you have not seen the Age of Disclosure film, spend the $20 and see it. We have, for $20, you can get to see all 10 speakers in our UFO Disclosure series, lamarzulli.com. You can just go right there and sign up and watch all the presentations. UFOs are real, burgeoning. They're not going away. The supernatural world is manifesting in ways that I've never seen. Buckle up, arm yourself. If you're watching this and you want to know, what's really going on, watch the 10 speakers that we had in our conference. That'll get you up to speed. Or watch any of our 10 UFO films. Ready. All right, folks, before I get into this, just a word. We still have the UFO Conference Deception 2026. It's up on the website. You can go and you can watch all 10 speakers at your leisure. It's all there, $20. And I want to thank all of you already who have participated in that. It's that important. It's coming, and it's not, it's ramping up. Let's just put it that way. Okay, so the headlines here is this: retired Israeli general says this: space aliens asked Trump not to expose the Galactic Federation. So we've known about the so-called Galactic Federation I've known about it for decades, literally for decades. And it's allegedly this group of otherworldly entities, beings who have coalesced together to be part of the Galactic Federation. Well, there's no proof of that other than channeled information. And we will get into some of that channeled information in another show. We are the Pleiadians. You don't know who you're talking to. If a person is channeling an entity, how does he or she know what they're channeling? And I used this analogy before, I'll say it again. So it's 2:30 in the morning. You get a knock on your front door. Wakes you up, you get out of bed, knock again. You go to the front door, some guy standing there, never seen it before. Hey, can I use your phone? My car broke down. What do you say? Oh yeah, come right in and use the phone. Of course not. Sorry, I'll call a tow truck and the police, but you can't come in and use the phone. It's not going to happen. Okay? Because you don't know what you're looking at. You don't know who this person is. Well, that's analogous to a person channeling or using other occult techniques to contact an off-world entity. You don't know what you're contacting, which is why we're told in the guidebook of a supernatural not to do it. Okay, so let's continue. Retired Israeli general and space security chief, Professor Haim Eshed, said during an interview with Israeli newspaper last week that extraterrestrials have been in contact with the governments of the United States and Israel for years. I do believe that. Absolutely, I believe that that's true. We've been reporting on this forever, and we'll continue to report on it. There was a quid pro quo, and we'll get into that. Eshed had claimed that U.S. President Donald Trump was on the verge of revealing the secret before the Galactic Federation asked him to remain silent, as the aliens are worried that humanity is not ready to learn about their existence yet. So, this is why, in my opinion, Congress is standing up. The members of Congress are standing up. Whistleblowers have come forward. Age of Disclosure, the film, which really was the impetus, the nexus for our conference to push back against the prevailing paradigm that we are not alone. Well, we're not alone, but these are not extraterrestrials. They are interdimensional entities which have a very nefarious agenda. You've heard me say this before. So, humanity is definitely ready. People are being prepped. Nobody cares. This is the amazing part. This is what I keep harping on. Nobody cares. The church doesn't care. I've been invited to show the Shroud of Turin film at a church. I'm not going to embarrass the people where we're doing this, but one of the things the pastor said is, well, we don't really want to talk about UFOs. Okay, I have no problem with that. I respect his wishes, absolutely respect his wishes. And I think they're honorable and everything else. But the problem is, Congress is talking about this. Age of Disclosure came out. Spielberg's coming out with a new movie. Where is the church? 20 years behind, asleep at the wheel, for the most part. I've had about a half a dozen pastors email me, and we give free resources to any pastor, access to digital access, but you can go online and watch all of our 10 UFO films for free. Thank you, Gil Zimmerman, my business partner. 10 UFO films. We're not the only Christian ministry that has that. Close Encounters of the First, Second, Third, and Fourth Kind. Alien Abductions. Hybrids. Cattle Mutilations. 2 films on Roswell. Crop Circles. Finally, What is the Truth? And it's all there. If you're a pastor, LA at lamarzulli.net, LA at lamarzulli.net, we'll give you the resources. Plus, you'll get a free book, Rungs of Disclosure, right there. That'll bring you up to speed. Then we'll do a Zoom chat if you want to. Write your questions down. I'm here. And that's what we're doing. Anyway, let's continue. The newspaper is one of Israel's biggest newspapers, and Eshed has a distinguished resume as a military officer, intelligence analyst, and head of space operations for the Israeli Defense Ministry. So let's just continue. First of all, this is an Omer Fudd. I'm saying that with all due respect. This guy is really smart. He's really intelligent, and he's held, positions of prestige throughout his career. The 87-year-old professor holds a doctorate in aeronautical engineering, supervised over 20 satellite launches, and received the Israeli Security Award 3 times. This guy is a stand-up guy. He's really smart, and he's telling us something. Eshed has a bit more stature than most of the people who say things like the UFOs as not to publish that they are here. Humanity is not ready yet. Eshed elaborated that President Trump was on the verge of revealing America and Israelis' years of interactions with the aliens and the Galactic Federation, but the aliens thought it'd be better to let people calm down first because they don't want to start mass hysteria. There's an agreement between the U.S. government and the aliens. They signed a contract with us to do experiments here. So let's walk through that real quick. So and this is in our film, The Experts Weigh In, where I sit down with Preston Dennett and Francisco Carreira of Exopolitics Portugal. Preston is an author, a UFO researcher, great guy. I consider him a friend of the show. We have different paradigms, just like Francisco and I do, but he's a good guy. Both of these guys are stand-up guys. And while we differ, we can sit down and discuss them. So there's a section where I'm talking to Preston Dennett, and I go, yeah, I'm not buying the toothache, President Eisenhower's toothache story, and he goes missing for 24 hours when he was out in California. California is next to what? Area 51, S4, who knows what? The bottom line is, I believe that Ike went and he signed the contract. And Eshed is basically stating that openly right here. I'll say it again. There's an agreement between the U.S. government and the aliens. They signed the contract with us to do experiments. It was a quid pro quo, just like the Book of Enoch. Why is Jesus warns us to be like the days of Noah? And then you read this and then you go, days of Noah, and you realize Book of Enoch tells us that the fallen angels came down And they had access to the female population. They took wives, but there was a quid pro quo. It's like, Dracula's getting at your door. You got to let him in. You got to invite him in. He can't go through that threshold. If you're a Christian, especially, no way. You have to invite them in. Well, it's the same thing here. So a quid pro quo. Well, yeah, we'll give you the toys. We'll give you the ships. We'll show you how they work. Just give us access to the population. Where have I heard that before? They too are researching and trying to understand the whole fabric of the universe, and they want us as helpers. Seriously? There's an underground base in the depths of Mars where their representatives are, and also our American astronauts, he said. If I had come up with that, what I'm saying today, 5 years ago, I would have been hospitalized. A shed can see it. Wherever I've gone with this in academia, they've said the man has lost his mind. Today, they're already talking differently. I had nothing to lose. I've received my degrees and awards. I am respected in universities abroad, where the trend is also changing. So he's right about this. 5 years ago, well, let's go this. Let's state this. In 2017, that's when Commander David Fravor is on Tucker Carlson's show. And Fravor says, whatever this craft, this tic-tac-shaped object that I saw was not of this earth. What do you do with that? That was the first rung on the ladder of disclosure. That led to the writing of the book. If you haven't read it yet, you need to read it. You need to do your homework. Plus, runsatdisclosure.com, interactive website. You go there, and, the book only has 17 rungs. We're up to rung number 25, and it ain't going away. The Jerusalem Post, which published translated excerpts of Hashed's interview on Tuesday, theorized that President Trump's creation of the U.S. Space Force could have something to do with this joint U.S.-Israeli Galactic Federation project on Mars. I talked to Gary Stearman about this a while back, and he's right. There's all sorts of technology, I believe, that's been left on Mars. There's books I've read about it where there seems to be a nuclear exchange which wiped out the atmosphere, but there were rivers, there were bodies of water on Mars. So what are we looking at here? And then, of course, you get the face on Mars and all this other stuff. I mean, it's unbelievable. Let's continue. Hashed was vague about how long the aliens have been working with humans and how long the Mars base has been operational. So Trump might have created the Space Force to address a recent need for more human staff at the facility. Both the U.S. and Israel have discussed plans for missions to the moon over the next few years. But that can be a smokescreen for sending personnel to Mars, or perhaps the Galactic Federation wants its human partners to demonstrate they retain the courage, ingenuity, and technical prowess to land on the nearest celestial body before they bring more humans to the Mars base. The Jerusalem Post also noted that Hashed has written a book that provides further details about human interaction with aliens, titled The Universe Beyond the Horizon, Conversation with Professor Chaim Hashed. The professor said that the book reveals how aliens played a role in preventing multiple nuclear apocalypses on Earth. Let me stop right there. I truly believe that that's the trigger. In our Watcher series, we broke the story with Robert Salas, who was the base commander at the Maelstrom Intercontinental Ballistic Base. They had 10 missiles in silos underground. The command center was about 60 feet underground, and a UFO hovered above the gate. It was glowing, pulsating, and it turned off all 10 intercontinental ballistic missiles. That's in our films on UFOs. I believe it's number, it's either 1, 2, or 3, but we show that. But it's also in Watchers 10. So what can I say, folks? Do your homework. The UK Daily Mail took Hashed's comments about changing trends as a reference to the growing amount of UFO material that has been recently declassified, including footage of multiple UFO encounters released by the Pentagon in April 2020. That's specifically the tic-tac-shaped UFO with the gimbal, which is seen a lot. You hear the public go, "Oh my gosh, there's a whole fleet of them." At the time of this writing, there was no public evidence that a Galactic Federation exists, although online jokesters opened several Twitter accounts claiming to be its representatives. Shortly after the Jerusalem Post story was published, NBC News asked the White House, Defense Department, and Israeli government to comment on Hashed's remarks, but they did not immediately respond. So let me just wrap this up. I believe he's telling the truth. I don't believe in the Galactic Federation. That's I've heard about this numerous times. It goes back 50 years. And so they've been saying the same thing. And just to quote Enrico Fermi, if the universe is teeming with life, where the heck is everybody? Where is everybody? So this is the coming Great Deception. This changes everything in a New York minute. They show up, and I believe it will be after some sort of a nuclear event happens on the planet. That's why they're so obsessed with nukes, because they know that that's their trigger. They know that that's their trigger. I'll be back again with another episode, probably on the whole UFO thing, because it's not going away. Consider becoming a member for like $10 a month, a little less than $10 a month. You get access, 10% off on on everything in the store, 10% off everything in the store. The monthly news magazine, Son Allison, our editor, does a great job on this, great articles and stuff. And you get content that is only available to members only. That's it. I do a show, one show a week just for members, and it's from the archives. It's from stuff that nobody's seen. Thanks for coming here. Really appreciate it. Thank you for your subscription. Thank you for your faithfulness. We'll see you again tomorrow with another show. We're here 7 days a week. God bless. Take care.